yet to read it, you're in for an extraordinary treat. It's a compelling, remarkable novel. And as the title suggests, it's on a vast and epic scale set across the Atlantic, but it also delves very deeply into the human heart. Polly, tell us, what was the starting point for this novel?
Well, actually, I've been thinking a lot about this because it's where do stories come from, isn't it? You know, where does a novel come from? And since my novels very rarely, I don't know where they're going. I don't know what they're going to be when I've done them. So in this case, there wasn't usually they come from a sort of a deep personal question that I've got, something that's just, and sometimes it's not even something that I can definitely kind of put into words, but an urge to investigate something emotional to do with my own life. And the genesis of this, which you were part of actually, that my second novel, Tiger, the writing of that was just a huge undertaking. I went to Siberia to research tigers there, to track tigers, to get a kind of a lot of background for the novel, and emotionally the whole thing was just a huge undertaking. And after I'd done it, it was so overwhelming. I was completely, I would say, I mean, devastated seems like a kind of a big word, but I didn't even know who I kind of was after I'd done it. And I think I think novelists will often say this: you're a different person on the other end from what you were when you started. So I was in this kind of, very, it felt like a bereavement, really, I would say, of the person that I was, and so I didn't really know what I was going to do next. I didn't even know if I could write anything else after that. And then just out of that came what has ended up being the beginning of the novel. It never really changed. It just sort of arrived. I just wrote about 5,000 words about this woman, Helen, who's a teacher, and she's a quite idiosyncratic teacher. She's quite odd, and she has very kind of intense commitment to her pupils, and she gets caught up in an explosion on the underground on the way home from work, and her life is completely turned upside down, and she is rescued by somebody. And I literally just wrote that entire thing, and it's virtually unchanged. But I had nothing else. There was nothing, and I was just, what's that? And you read it. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, but, and then I just thought that relating it to how I was feeling at the time, it was that kind of being catapulted out from your old self into who knows what. And that's sort of, I think I was sort of expressing that. And I thought, well, if I just follow her, I was really interested in her as a person. She, was quite entertaining to write. I thought if I follow her, I think I might get an answer to my own personal problem. And so it didn't come from an interest in sailing or anything. That all kind of came later. It was all just a woman who has been blown out of her life and is in another one, and she doesn't know quite what to do. So that's where it came. Yeah, so I can see it in retrospect. At the time you do it, if I'd thought that's how it was going to be, I'd have been quite overwhelmed to even carry on.
Why don't you give us that prologue first?
Yes.
Because this shows us old Helen, as it were.
Yes.
Before things really start happening to her.
Yes, and the prologue in a way has the whole kind of book in it, because it's sort of a book of two kind of halves, I guess, in a sense, because they go, half of it is set in London, and then half of it is out when they're sailing. Okay, so this is the prologue. Beauty in a wife is so essential that if it does not exist, it must be invented. I became quite a bit better looking as a direct result of being Frank's wife. I was his prize, and my body remodelled itself to fit the pedestal. My accent improved, my hair thickened. Can you imagine? To be prized when you have never even really been noticed before? Who'd have thought that clunky old heteronormative marriage could have such transforming power? There is no woman its inferno cannot fire from plain Jane clay into porcelain Venus, and no woman it cannot contain, no matter how ship-launchingly lovely she may be, for marriage is a gallery of possessions, a display case with the wife at the centre. Other men will look and covet and plot, but they will factor into their considerations that the wife belongs to another man. Of course, I could not be Frank's prize without being his possession, but I loved that too. Beauty in the wife reinforces the marriage. But beauty in the husband is a catastrophe. It's a bomb rolling unexploded in the hull. The beautiful husband draws assaults on the marriage, and the assaults will not relent until either the marriage is extinguished or the beauty fades. Women, as Frank and I found, recognise no possessions of another woman, respect no marriage. The beautiful husband remains free and at large. Frank's catastrophic beauty came upon us so gradually, like a kind of weathering, or even a despoiling of the Frank I once knew, that I did not spot the moment of definitive change. But then, one day, he accompanied me to nursery to pick up our son, Nicholas, and one of the other mothers stared at the baby, then at Frank, then sidled up to me to whisper, "That's your husband?" And I realised something momentous had taken place. I was confused because my husband was still, in my mind, shy dreamer Frank of the Innisfree, which is the boat that they met on and fell in love on. That night I observed him critically as he undressed and came to bed. He had definitely filled out. He had hardened round the eyes and jaw. Confidence inhabited his movements. If I squinted, he was still benign, still sweet to someone who had known the young man, but to someone who had not, I could see it now, the accumulation of masculinity like a patina upon him. Instead of devotion, equality, fun, he radiated sex. In that moment, as he casually threw his trousers over the chair, my husband Frank transcended us both, for now he held a monopoly over all the resources of the marriage. He occupied more space and seemed to have more weight than both of us put together. The beautiful husband recasts the physics of the marriage. He alters gravity. Perhaps a different woman would be delighted to see her partner of many years in a new and ravishing light. But Frank's beauty did not ignite desire in me. It struck me dumb with fear. Love does not alter when it alteration finds. The words turned in my head. But what does it do when faced with a premonition? The day Frank's beauty announced itself was an anniversary more profound than the one we marked with cards and varying levels of ardour every year on 29th of April. It was as if a countdown to a devastating event had begun, from which no amount of cultivated cynicism about marriage, trust in Frank, nor love for my child could save me. Sometimes I lay awake at night beside my beautiful husband and wondered if the devastating event had actually happened. I had missed it, and I was wandering deluded in its aftermath. For the truth of it was that I loved my husband with all my heart. My love for Frank embarrassed me with its cheerfulness and its hope. When we married back then on the deck of the Innisfree, I cried with happiness and not because I was young and stupid. I believed our marriage to be the most beautiful thing either of us had made, outshining even the child it contained. Even as it would come to splinter inside us and smash around us, still I could not fully imagine myself without it. And this was surely why I could not breathe a word to Frank about what I had glimpsed in our future. The survival of our relationship felt basic to my own survival, as vital a mechanism as thirst. My faith in what we had created made any journey comprehensible, every fire possible to withstand. Without it, there was only wreckage strewn all the way to the lonely horizon and the slow collapse to the deep sea bed.
What a setup. So There are three characters, main characters in
Yes.
the book. Helen,
Yes.
beautiful Frank,
Yes.
and Cindy.
Mm.
Tell us a bit more about each of them.
Well, so we've heard about Helen. She's a teacher, and Frank is. So she met her husband when she kind of to escape being a teacher. She trained as a teacher. Her mother wanted her to kind of stay nearby up in Fleetwood, and to kind of get away from all of that, she went to learn how to sail in Lanzarote, because you can join crews, and it's a thing that young people do. They go, and there she met Frank doing something similar, and he now. So they had their time out there. They spent several years just doing crewing and enjoying themselves, and then when they came back, because they were having a baby, Frank is incredibly talented as well as being beautiful, and he at the point of the novel he has formed his own photographic agency, and he has very fabulous clients and is doing very well. And one of the pupils at Helen's school is Cindy. So she's teaching in kind of inner city school with a lot of deprived children, and Cindy is her most troubling pupil, and she can't stop thinking about her. She describes her as strolling around in her subconscious as if she's auditioning to be her daughter. She can't kind of get away from her, and they decide through various things that happen to bring Cindy on the journey with them when they go. And she's quite a disruptive influence, and I suppose once they're on the boat, you see the notion of a boat being, it's a kind of a crucible where you're away from all the normal kind of societal expectations, and I wanted to see how those things play out. I mean, Cindy is, it's not even a working class thing. She's from an underclass. She's a foster child. Her foster parents don't care about her. She doesn't have anything, and by this point, Helen and Frank are a very nice middle class couple. I'd thought doing very well, and they also have this son, Nicholas, as well.
But they've had this absolutely terrible thing has happened to them with the explosion that Helen is in the middle of on the underground, and as a result of that, they decide to sell their nice middle class home, and sell all their possessions and put it all in restoration of the boat, and set sail. What could possibly go wrong?
And it is actually, that's Frank, because Frank goes through a lot of evolution in this book, and and there's a lot to be said against him. But this is actually his grand gesture, and a really so when Helen is caught up in this explosion, it's devastating for her in lots of ways. She is rescued by this man who subsequently vanishes, and I was very interested in this as the sort of grief response, because Helen is unremittingly inappropriate throughout this entire book. So she has none of the appropriate grief responses that you would expect, and her main reaction to what's happened to her is to become obsessed with the man who saved her, and be willing to do anything to find him, and that's her sole driving force. And Frank is watching this. He's watching his wife mad as a box of frogs by the time they really get going, and he can see, unlike a lot of partners, what is going to save her isn't going off for a spa weekend or anything. It's got to be something massive, And he comes up with something massive, which is he finds the boat they'd fallen in love on and restores it and suggests they leave and leave all that behind. And I was really interested in that as an idea. If you could recreate the past where you were happy, if you could recreate that, would it take away unutterable pain from the present? Can you really do that? And he believes and wonder of life is contained in the grief response. I think, you know, it kind of and I think that's why, I mean, I wasn't sure why there's an explosion at the beginning, but I think that's a way of showing like what a devastating event is. It's a wipeout and a propelling into something else, and it's full of energy, and that sort of incident was able to power an entire novel. Yeah, so I think that was what I was trying to follow, that, and that's why she's inappropriate in a way, because she, you know, you've gone into another reality, a kind of, after a traumatic event, you actually occupy a different kind of reality, and she's responding to very reasonably to the reality she's now in, but of course everybody else is in the other one.
Yeah, including her therapist.
Oh yes, gosh, yes. I did enjoy that. Yeah, and so you can see all the normal things that someone's trying, because people are trying to help. You know, her husband's trying to help, and everybody's trying to help. But of course, if you've been catapulted into a different reality, they can't help you. And the only person who can help her is the person who vanished, who was part of it. You know, so that's what's in her mind. There's nothing that can help me, except this. They're on the boat, the four of them, so Cindy, Nicholas and Frank and Helen, and they stumble upon an ambush of orcas ambushing a sperm whale and its calf. This where it's set, I was quite precise about where it is, sort of around the Azores where they are, and there's a migration route of female sperm whales sort of going round, and that's what orcas do, is that they lurk around and they ambush in an incredibly orchestrated way, and so the family stumble upon this ambush going on. Mum, they're coming, Nicholas said, and handed me the binoculars. Binoculars were not needed to confirm that the orcas were gaining. This was no surprise, as they can swim at up to 55 kilometres an hour, and while our speed was increasing, it could never get above 13 or 14 knots, about 25 kilometres an hour. Faster, I said to Frank, we need to go much faster. Why don't we stop and keep completely still, Nicholas said. Turn the engine off. I read somewhere that if they attack your boat, that's what to do, so they get bored. We're supposed to note their markings and tell the Coast Guard. Nicholas, did you see what they did to those sperm whales? Frank said. That's what they will do to the boat. We must try to outrun them. If they ram us like they rammed those whales, we could sink. Easy, Frank, I said. There's no need to frighten everyone. We are being chased by 15 killer whales. I'm not sacrificing my boat. We should never have stopped. Jesus, Helen, what is the matter with you? My heart froze as I saw the fins speeding towards us, the orca's dark bulk leaping from the waves. We can do this, I said. We're a team. We are going to outrun these whales, and we are going to get to Cape Verde. We are not ringing the Coast Guard like a bunch of tourists and sacrificing this amazing boat and this amazing trip to a few psychotic, overgrown fucking goldfish. Got it? Everyone stared at me. Understand? If anyone touches that VHF, getting bumped by a killer whale will seem like a holiday in comparison. This is insane, said Cindy wonderingly. You people are off your fucking heads. Okay then, said Frank. I might just, yeah. We were now sailing faster than I had ever sailed. I was awed by the sheer power we were harnessing, but behind us the orcas were whole creatures now, not just fins. Their bodies were patches of sunlight made savagely real.
They were absolutely focused on us, and it would not be long until they reached us. Barely had the thought occurred when a glossy head lifted out at the starboard side, and an orca opened its mouth, revealing the neat oval of blunt, powerful teeth, like small missiles lined up in a creamy pink silo. Then it dipped back under. Bang! I thought you said they couldn't ram us if we were moving, Cindy cried. It would be worse if we were still, said Frank. Helen, get the spinnaker up. We are going to outrun these bastards. He slapped the helm with a roar. Come on, girl. The spinnaker is a very fine balloon-like sail meant for capturing as much wind as possible when there is barely any. It is not meant for windy conditions, and although it would make the Innisfree faster, it would render her extremely unstable. Frank and I had exchanged a look. We had never sailed in such a way before, and in all other circumstances it would be considered foolhardy. But in this wordless discussion, we both knew we had no choice. Decision made, Nicholas and I fixed the spinnaker to its pole. The Innisfree was foaming at her bit, ready to race, and as the spinnaker burst into shape, she surged forward as if we were clinging to her main, bareback at the Grand National. Bang! The water around the Innisfree now was slick with orcas. They sped underneath and sprang, gleaming on each side. With this, the engine died. The propeller, how the hell? Frank said. The Innisfree did not slow. The engine was only ever a supplement, and she had 3 sails full of wind. It's all right, he called, more to her than to us. We don't need the engine. The main thing is we're sailing. The banging continued, becoming fiercer. The Innisfree bounced and splashed like an enormous swan, running and flapping to take flight. I looked over the side. A calf rose towards me with a chunk of rudder in its mouth before flipping over like a captive performing whale. Behind it, a female arced and dived. Their places were immediately taken by 2 others. They were playing like cats with a mouse. It was hard to see it any other way. Oh, hell, said Frank as the helm They gave up on me being any use, really, but they just had me lie down the centre line like this, because that's the most stable part until I felt better. And then you come out of that, and we did watches, you know, so you're over a period of 24 hours, you do every 6 hours, and you have a watchmate, and it all kind of fell into place. I mean, there's just nothing more magical, really, than being on the ocean in the middle of the night with the stars and the vastness of it, and the feeling that you're on a planet, and being able to see the sun and the moon at the same time, and the curve of the earth. Yeah, I mean, I got it in the end. I thought, yeah, I can see, and it's a perfect canvas to look at all these things.
And didn't you do some exams as well?
Well, I try, you know. Because the charts are amazing. I mean, to see a map in reverse. So a chart is a map, but all the land is blank, and all the sea is full of like info, and it's got contours and number. I mean, it's just amazing. So I loved all that, and it's a whole planet. So basically, you've got an entire planet underneath. And so I wanted to understand. I wanted to be able to navigate. So I took a course that you could learn how to plot, but I knew I wouldn't pass the exam, because you're sort of going, when you're, oh my God, you've got another planet based in Saturn. No, it's not what they're looking for, really. So I didn't put myself through that. And I did a sea survival course outside Glasgow, where you learned about, lifeboats and flares and things, and then you had to go in a pool and learn how to flip your life raft back up if it's blown over. So I got trapped under that, to come and get me. But yeah, but it's good. I've got the certificate.
I mean, you also, we should say, you live part of the year on a houseboat.
Yeah, I do. I find it absolutely brilliant for writing. Being on this has changed me in that sense that. I find being on water, and there's research that says it's actually very good for your mental health, not even being beside it, being on it. And there is something just miraculous about being on water, and they've got the birds go by, and I love it, and it has changed my sort of just way of being. Yeah, I think I couldn't give that up now. There's nothing to do with sailing. I have a boat there. If anything goes wrong, I'm a dribbling mess going around asking people to solve it for me. But it's changed me in that sense. Water is just wonderful.
There's a great tradition of sea literature. Does any of it inspire you?
Well, I think I was more interested in the non-fiction things. I was more interested in the extremity of it. So I read a lot about stars. I read a lot of survival stories about. That's a whole things like Adrift. Where people have just been marooned and how they live and how they survive. And I was very interested in that. That was a huge wealth of things. Actually, it's a bit like with Tiger. The thing when I was reading around that, because I was sort of immersed in the subject. But what I found was in the literature, generally, it's sort of, in the case of Tigers, anthropomorphized, or it's kind of, turned into a sort of fable-y sort of thing. You're not getting to the isness of it. So I wasn't really that drawn to literary approaches to it. I was much more interested in how do people describe their experience. How do you describe this? It's like being in outer space. How do you describe it? So it was mostly, as with Tiger, it was mostly the sort of the non-fiction. I couldn't find many. A lot of adventure books, quite got into Master and Commander and things like that. But I found it a bit distracting because I thought you haven't been out on it. Yeah. And I don't need your interpretation. I need to know what it's really like. In fact, the only book where I thought somebody had really done that brilliantly was Orbital. The one where she describes the astronauts in space, and I mean really, I read that and I thought, look, I know you haven't been in space, but I would believe you if you told me that you had. And she had literally just sat in the NASA archive, and done it online. And if I'd found more things like that.
Because both sea literature is written by men, so it's a very
that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, and all the Tiger stuff is as well. And there were very few. And when people write about animals, they have them talking and things like that, and they just fetishize them, and that was the same sort of problem. I was trying to get to the actual thing of it.